Sloping horizons is a problem that all photographers fall into at one time or another. We're concentrating so much on the technical details, maybe the foreground subject, and other issues, and we just don't spot that the lamppost is badly leaning over or the horizon is sloping. Out of those two, sloping horizon seems to be the one that makes up the bulk of the problems and the issues that Camera Club judges raise. So it is a fairly common criticism of Camera Club images, and rightly so, because it's one of the easiest things to put right. But of course, to put it right, we need to spot it in the first place. Now, I think this may be one of those areas of photography that gets missed because the author is rushing, or not critically viewing the image at a 100% size before sending it off to the club competition. Now, we can fix the bulk of these issues very easily in Adobe Camera Raw, Lightroom, Photoshop and Elements. Let's take a look. The horizon here has such a lean that I think we can spot that pretty easily just by looking at the image on screen. Sometimes the slope is not quite so pronounced. So how can we easily tell? Well, what I often do is to select my crop tool. I normally have my crop tool set to the rule of thirds, and so when I click inside the picture I get the crop shape appear. But what I can do is either look at the straight edge if it falls close to the horizon and make a judgment, but even if that doesn't, if you just click outside the image in no man's land and just click and hold, you can see the grid comes up temporarily. So that would be another good way to tell if your horizon isn't quite level. Now we can come away from the crop. We don't want to crop that, so I'm going to hit the little no entry at the top. But we do need to select the crop tool in Photoshop to put this right, because one of the options we have at the top of the screen is the ability to straighten the image. So let's select the tool and give that a go. All we need to do, you can see the little icon that's appeared on screen. We've got a little plus, and I think that's a little symbol of a ruler. All we need to do is to put the plus on the horizon line and draw a line along the horizon. So what we're effectively saying to Photoshop is that part should be nice and level. And as soon as we release, you can see exactly what happens. It's straightened up. We can take a quick look. We can look at that grid along the bottom there, or click outside and take a look at the grid as we can see it there. And that looks pretty good, so we're reassured that we've drawn the line correctly and we've got the image straight. You can see that the crop has to come in just a little bit here because we are going to need to lose little bits of the edge, which are going to be a bit odd. The pieces you can see up here, here and here. So we can probably tweak this crop a little more, but not very much, and when we hit the tick on the options bar, there we have the horizon changed. Always a good idea, if you can, to maybe get the straightening of your image done before you resize it ready to send to the competition. Now here we have our other image, and I've just picked this one up so we can straighten that vertical, and we can use exactly the same tool. We just select the tool and we can draw a line down there to tell Photoshop that part of my image should be straight. And again, it's done instantly for us, so you can see why the judges do mention these things. They are very, very easy to put right. As you can see here, I've opened up a seascape in Camera Raw. Seascapes are good to demonstrate this, of course, for obvious reasons. And I don't think we need any grids to tell us once again that my right foot must have sunk into the sand because I'm tilting to the right. And if we're not careful, all the water's going to run away on the right. But if we look up at the top of the screen, we can see we have the same straightening tool we've just looked at in Photoshop, and it works exactly the same way, either vertically or horizontally. If you can't see the horizon really clearly, of course you can zoom into your image, but we'll see if we can do this just by drawing the line and allowing Photoshop to straighten it, and I can see the line in comparison to the horizon, and that looks pretty good. So I'm going to touch the enter key here. That will commit that, and I could continue with my manipulations knowing that the horizon is straight and level. Now when we're working in Camera Raw, we're working on a high resolution image, so we're doing automatically what I suggested we should do in Photoshop, that we should always do the corrections for verticals and horizontals before we resize the image for the Camera Club competition. Here I've done that. I've opened up the image, I've resized it to a 16:9 aspect ratio. That allows me to put my rule of thirds line nicely along that horizon. So I've even had one final check to make sure that the judge is not going to tell me the horizon is not straight. Now I don't suppose it's going to come as much of a surprise that we do exactly the same thing in Lightroom. Here you can see we have a different sort of image, so the horizon over the back there, where we can probably see a beach in the distance, it may not be a bad idea to enlarge that just a little bit. But if we go to our crop overlay, there we have exactly the same tool we saw in Photoshop, we'll find in Photoshop Elements, and we found in Adobe Camera Raw, and we can use it in exactly the same way for horizontals and also verticals. But here, there's the bit that should be horizontal, and that doesn't look too bad at all, does it? But let's just check it out by clicking in No Man's Land, and that grid appears, so I can look very carefully along the horizon to make sure everything looks okay, and then I can click Done. Now we'll go back to our zoom tools here and fit the image on screen, and there we have our horizontal nicely level. Now there are times when we have some problems with converging verticals. Not all of the time, of course, because sometimes when we stand at the bottom of a tall building and look up, it's the converging verticals that gives the image its wow value, its power. But not every circumstance needs that. So we do have some tools within Adobe Camera Raw and in Lightroom that are pretty powerful at dealing with these. Now if I take you over to the right hand side, Camera Raw we're working in, I'm going to my lens corrections area. This is where we can select a profile for our camera. If we've got some distortion in our lenses, and most lenses do, we can correct for it here. Aberration is another thing we can correct here. That removes it almost entirely, but this is the tab I want to draw your attention to, because this is the area where we can adjust the uprights. This is automatic. This will do the levels, this will do the verticals, this will do both. Only takes a few seconds to click all of them. Let's try the automatic, and there you can see what it's done. It's done a pretty good job and even got rid of that lamppost at the top right. Now let me go to the no entry sign to undo that. We'll try just doing the verticals. There we get the verticals absolutely spot on, but of course Photoshop is telling us now, or Camera Raw is telling us, that we do need to crop the image because we've got to get rid of these bits on the side. And I'm not sure whether this one's going to do a better job. Well, there you can see what it's done. It all depends really what you require. If you've got buildings which are leaning and you don't want them to lean, the best thing to do is to just maybe zoom out a little bit to allow a little space around the outer edge so you can use these tools and not lose much of your image. That wasn't the intention here, so this isn't the perfect image to demonstrate this, but nevertheless that automatic tool does a pretty good job for one click. Lots of other options down there, but we'll just stay with the automatic setting. Here we are back working in Lightroom, and we went to the lens correction tab in Adobe Camera Raw, and we do the same thing here. And there we have our basic, our profile, our color. We have our manual settings, which you saw a few moments ago. But we also have some options here. Now the auto setting is much the same as the one we just viewed, so let's click that and see what it does. That does a pretty good job, doesn't it? That's done that. Let me take it off again, so you keep your eye on the picture while I hit the auto button. we wouldn't really want anything more than that. And when I said a few moments ago that if we want to straighten the horizons a little bit, and of course this is going to happen if we're using a wide angle lens and we're tilting the lens up a little bit, which is exactly what we're doing. But here we've got a picture which is not quite so close, so we've got a bit of room around the outside, and these automatic tools then work absolutely perfectly. While we're here, let's just try the vertical and see what it does. Much the same thing in this instance. So here we've got another automatic tool that works straight out of the box.